and I'm Jeannie Pretty Pate, and I'm the Secretary for Transportation. The chair is Noel Two Liggins. He's running late, but he'll be here. And we always start off our meetings with a opening prayer. So, Fats, do you want to give the prayer?
I pray in my language and pray with me. Yeah, Father, please be Father, just follow on me and Helen, do DOT, Zugedena, Vice Chairman, Vice Chair, West Area, whatever. May watch, Philip Father, Beijos, the right, just Wagad, Lagi, watch no, just Wagad, so, Philip Chow, Whether about picture, you could, however, I hope.
Okay, then I'm just going to go ahead and turn it over to Dana, and then I'll take over whenever.
Okay, my apologies for running a little bit late. Basically, this meeting here is for the legislature to get them updated and up to speed on what's going on, the progress that I've made so far, because in the end they're going to have to give the final approval on it, whether or not it's a go, or if they like it, they're going to vote in favor of it. So I felt that if we involved them, through the process on where we're at, and maybe they have some suggestions that they'd like to throw out there, it's good. But basically it's your guys' meeting given to the legislature, given what we've done so far, where we're at, some of the goals, projection dates, stuff like that. So if everybody could kind of go around and introduce themselves, and we could get going from there.
Chris Mayhews, I'm with Beartooth RC&D. We're a regional economic development organization that covers the 5-county area that includes Bighorn County. I've been acting as facilitator for the project.
I'm Kevin Malone. I'm with the MDT in Helena, the Consult Design Bureau. My function is a project design manager. I deal with our consultants contract with Dowell HKM and manage that piece of the work.
Kevin Nelson, CTA Architects Engineers, design consultant to Dowell HKM.
Sarah Nicolai with Dowell HKM in Helena. We're the engineering firm working with MDT on this project, and my role has been to assist with public involvement and environmental analysis.
Hello, I'm Todd Cormier. I'm the project manager from Dowell HKM. I'm the one who is making sure the project is moving along in accordance with MDT's policies and making sure that everyone's got along in the process.
My name is Gary Neville. I'm with MDT from the Billings District Office.
My name is Linnell Peterson. I work for a company called Ethnos Vines Incorporated out of Billings, Montana. We are a cultural resource firm, subcontracting with Dowell HKM, and my job is to look at the existing documents and see if there are any concerns.
Doug League with MDT, Environmental Services Bureau, working on environmental coordination.
Good morning, I'm Chris Norrington with MDT out of Helena, and I deal with the rest area prioritization plan and program and the funding allocated to rest areas.
So on our side, I'd like to recognize some people who know everybody is. There's Vincent Pickendorm. He's a senator from Bighorn District. We have Mr. Bill Okro. He's a finance guy here at the legislature. We have Mr. Kenny Pretty on top over there. He's a jack of all trades here. Sergeant at Arms. So any of you guys get out of line, he'll drag you out. We have the lovely Sherry Chandler over there. She's the jack of all trades too. You've met, Ms. Pretty Paint. We have, Mr. James Morrison from the Travel Transportation Department. We have, Mr. Emerson Bull Chief, Tipo, I think some of you guys already know him. We have, Angie Bearclaw, she's a planner, Transportation Department. We have, Polly Yarlick, she's at the Transportation Department as well. Mr. Stephen Amiot, he's a Transportation Planner. My assistant, Rena Yellowrope. We have, Ms. Lucille Other Medicine, she's a representative from the Reno District. We have the distinguished Canute Old Crow there from, Lodge Grass, he's the Secretary of the House. Mr. Gerald Rimwolf, he's from the Wildwood District. He gave a good prayer this morning. We have our IT guy is Lorenzo Mountain Sheep. He's our cameraman today. So with that, I'll turn it over to you guys. You start the presentation, and I don't know if you want to go and take questions as we're going along, if that's okay, or if you want to wait till the end, because okay, as we go. So if you guys have any questions at all, anything is, you know, ask your questions now, because I know that sometimes, you know, we sit in presentations, and you please hold your questions for later, and then you forget them when it's over. So let's go with that. With that, I don't know who's gonna give it. So this guy here, he's gonna take over.
So thank you. Thank you again for the opportunity to present to you and discuss this project. As Vice Chairman Wilson outlined, we'll just keep it as an open discussion format. That's the way all of our meetings have been. We've been at this for officially, I guess, 5 or 6 months now. We met with Chairman Old Coyote originally and his advisors to discuss the possibility of having a rest area here in this part of the state. It's been something the state's wanted to do for decades, I guess, and the ingredients haven't come together so far. So we're hoping that this effort, the partnership with the Crow Tribe, also the partnership with the Park Service and the potential to have a new visitor center co-located with the rest area, and then possibly even a Crow Tribal Museum located on this site. Hopefully the momentum created with the agreement and the involvement of all those individuals over the last 6 months, the meetings that we've had, the agreements that we've come to, the studies that are beginning to take place to lay the foundation for the possibility of this rest area will create enough momentum that it will get built this time. We all have faith that that will happen. So we appreciate the Vice Chairman introducing this topic to the Legislative Committee and the opportunity to present it to you and get your input and your discussions, and we look forward to your involvement throughout the course of the planning project. So right now, basically where we're at is we're in the process of selecting a location, and I'll turn it over to Todd here in a minute, who will kind of go through our process to date, where we've been, but we hope in the next several months to agree on a location, and then beyond that we can begin to design the facility, get it laid out properly, hopefully culminating in construction beginning next fall. So I just want to stress that we have tried to involve as many individuals as possible, both within the reservation here as well as without, to ensure that we're covering all the things that need to be covered and considering everything that needs to be included in the final decision of where to place this, the type of facility that we want to see there that'll benefit the community here, but also serve the public in the form of a rest area. So right now, also the state has the funding to make this project happen, and so the state is really the lead on this project. But the Park Service, Denise Swanke, the superintendent, is on her way here. I miscommunicated to her the time, so I apologize for that, but she's on her way. But the Park Service is equally vested in this project and wants to be a vocal partner. So with that, I'll turn it over to Todd, and he can kind of give you an idea of where we're at today. We also have an agenda. I hope that everyone got a copy of that. If you don't have one, just let us know and we can get you another copy. So again, open discussion format. Please speak up or raise your hand or what have you at any point if you have a question or would like to provide some input into this process. So thank you again for being here today.
Thanks, Chris. So I am going to take a little time to kind of go over what we've done to date, bring everyone up to speed. Chris mentioned, this is something the state's been trying to get started for some time. They actually got so far as developing an environmental assessment, which was to locate the site right on the interchange. As everyone remembers, during the last big flood events, that site was a couple feet underwater. So based on that, it was decided that we better look at some different sites. In that regard, there's also the idea from the national park that they may want to redevelop their visitor center, and then the thought from the tribe of developing a pro-tribal museum. So the ability to put all three of these sites co-located together really just makes sense, especially when you start considering the sharing of parking, sharing of water and sewer. At that point, we started this process. We're kind of referring to this as phase 1A, or phase 1 process. This is just the initial, where what we really want to do is just pick a site. The next process after this, phase 1B, once a site is selected, we will actually go through a little bit more detailed analysis of that particular site. The purpose of that would be to go to what MET refers to as a phase 2, or what has been referring to as a phase 2. Essentially, that's going to be the design build process for MDT to develop a rest area. The other two uses, the Pro-Tribal Museum and the National Park Visitor Center, would be separate developments developed outside of MDT's scope. So ultimately, what we're trying to get to is help develop a design build process for MDT so they can go out and get a contract to develop a rest area. But ultimately, we also want that rest area site to be selected and developed in such a way that it can handle the Pro-Tribal Museum and a future visitor center should those two uses come together. And in that regard, I believe MDT is working with the tribe and the national park to develop a memorandum of understanding. I'll proceed with that, but that's lawyer talk, so I'm not going to get into that. We started this process, oh gosh, probably 4 or 5 months ago now. We've had several meetings with the advisory committee, as well as the Department of the National Park Service and Federal Highways. To date, we actually started, stepping all the way back, and I know this map's a little hard to see, but we started with 4 sites. 1, 2, 3, 4 in no particular order. At the initial meeting, we did end up removing this site just simply based on the size of the site. It just simply wasn't large enough based on average rest area sizes, leaving us the site just east of the health center, the site on the top of the hill, just north and east of the trading post, and the site just north of the battlefield. Each of these sites were identified by the tribe because they're tribal land, and each of the sites should be able to be served by MDT's facilities as well as Pro Water and sewer. So from that point, we moved forward with a public survey, and we'll get into a little bit more of what came out of that. But we did that at the Pro Native Days, surveyed 94 folks volunteered to participate in that survey. We got a lot of good information on what they felt would be a good site, how they felt the site should be developed in terms of theme and vision. And like I said, we'll dive into that a little bit later. To date, we've completed a traffic review of the traffic on Interstate 90 and Highway 212, done a crash analysis on that, also developed what we feel is the amount of trip generation that would be needed, or would be developed rather, for each of the 3 sites. I will be talking about that in more detail. We've completed an initial site review of utilities, talking with Morrison Maryland, who is currently working with the tribe on improvements to the water and sewer system. sites can be served, and that would be the intent as we move forward, is that the department would tie into those services. We've completed an initial geotechnical review of the area. We've completed a cultural and environmental resource study, which we'll be talking about here in the meeting. Completed a noise study of each of the three remaining sites. Sarah will be chatting a little bit more about that. What we need to do moving forward is a more detailed site evaluation where we would rank each of the three sites against each other based on the information we've collected, do a final memo, and move on to the next phase of the project. So that's kind of a long, short overview of what we've done to date. If anyone has any questions right now, I'd be happy to take any. Otherwise, we'll move forward with the agenda.
Let me kind of stress one point that there's funding available just for the rest area at this time right now. So right, first phase is just the rest area, and there's nothing there for the museum, but we're looking at a place that could house both the rest area and the museum.
Correct.
And potentially visitor center for national.
Yeah, visitors, so right now, it's just the rest area, and I wanted to make that clear, because when I first got in there, I thought that it was, everything, that pretty big project, but as I found out that it's just part of one of the steps that we need to get done before we could go on to these other ones, so just a comment I'd like to make, everybody's information.
And whatever we do, it's going to be with the idea that each of those two other uses would be coming forward. So we don't want to develop the site in such a way that we would preclude those two uses from being able to be developed or utilize the same footprint. For example, we would want to try to share parking. It just makes sense. So I guess in that regard, we want to make sure that each of the sites can be graded appropriately, is large enough to be able to handle three sites. We don't want to just come in with the rest area and say, well, we're good, and we hope you guys can figure things out. So that's not what we're doing. We want to make sure that we move in with this site that will work for all three uses. And I should also mention that I believe the National Park also does not have funding set aside for the new visitor center either. So they're not necessarily ready to pull the trigger either.
They would have to get congressional approval for their one thing that they could apply under that. We should maybe mention too about utilities, that we'll cite utilities for the
Right. So any utilities we would extend to the site wouldn't just be sized for what we did for the rest area. It would be sized to be able to accommodate all three uses. So when the other two uses wanted to come in, they could just look at the utilities for whether there would be any size utilities.
Real quickly, I know we kind of wanted to bypass the MOU discussion, but I would like to at least touch on it and just maybe, Gary, you could say the status as you're aware and maybe get a better handle on a resource and a contact that we can follow up with.
Yes, I provided the tribe with a MOU probably a month ago, and I really haven't heard any feedback on the wordage in the MOU. The MOU is actually kind of trailing some of the steps in the MOU, but I really haven't had any feedback from the tribe yet on the status of that. I'm not even sure who to ask.
I haven't seen anything, as far as MOUs or anything, but if you did send one in, it's legal. So let me, get with legal and see where they are with that.
And I should probably mention too, the site that is ultimately selected would not be purchased by MPT. questions, comments? Oh, you got, it would be the MDT rest area, it would be Crow Tribal Museum, possibly. That would be a separate project. And then a new visitor center for the battlefield through the national park. Also a separate project. Both the Tribal Museum and the visitor center aren't being funded with this project, but we are considering their placement with this project. Kevin, did you?
And then, which location was the best, for the traffic review?
We haven't,
Have decided?
well, we actually haven't gotten to that.
Okay, all right.
But, there's really not one that's better or worse in terms of traffic.
I'm not sure if there needs to be a discussion about the BIA involvement with the trust fund and a potential lease involved, with BIA approval. And I don't know what the regulations are concerning that, but
Yeah, the PIA has been brought forward, or brought ahead with what we're doing. What Kevin is saying is, we're not certain what the legal requirements are of the long-term lease, but I'm sure that would get figured out in the next phase of the project.
That might be something that the Crow Tribal Legal Department can follow up on also. I'm sure that's part of what they normally consider anyway, but
Any further questions, comments? Okay. So we'll jump into kind of the meat of what this meeting will be about. As I mentioned, we did get through the traffic memo. MDT provided us traffic counts and crash data for both I-90 and 212. We also took data from the national park that they have in terms of visitation for the visitor center. And using that data, we developed, through MDT's process of determining how large the rest area should be, made some determinations on at least usage size for the rest area. Through the national parks, previous studies for what they need, we gleaned out some of their parking demands and made some assumptions on what each of these three uses would bring to the site. What we're looking at is needing, let me make sure I get my numbers right. We're needing a facility that would have 11 restroom stalls for women, 7 restroom stalls for men in terms of just the rest area, and a total parking for all three facilities of 172 passenger vehicle stalls and 67 oversized vehicle stalls. The thought being that those numbers should be able to adequately handle each of the three sites together, whether it's a daytime use or a nighttime use. So your rest area tends to get a bit more use at night, especially with oversized vehicles coming in and looking to rest for the evening. But then those vehicles aren't necessarily staying long hours during the day. During the day, we have RVs who will be coming to use the visitor center or coming to use the Crow Tribal Museum. So there is some overlap on that usage. Just in terms of big round numbers, that's probably about 6 acres worth of parking, 5 or 6 acres. We're thinking that the facility itself, the three facilities would probably accommodate another 5 to 6 acres. We're probably looking at 11 to 12 acres total for all three sites, but we haven't nailed down those numbers just yet, so I would take that sizing with a grain of salt.
one needs to be a reasonable assessment of what a site would accommodate for parking without disturbing a whole bunch of land. You know, there's, the sites we're looking at are not really level per se. The site across from the health center is level, but the other sites are not. They would require a lot of earthwork to make a parking lot out of it, the magnitude we're talking about.
Well, and it's important to note too that we're not necessarily just talking a big Walmart parking lot either. There's ways to separate out that parking in different levels based on the topography, at least having interconnect between the three, and you best utilizing the sites. And, but yes, Kevin's right. You know, some of the sites are flat and would lend themselves better to a larger development like that. Others are a bit more vertical in nature and would require a lot more earthwork. But as long as we know what we think we need for the site layout, we can work around the topography. By looking at each of these, if we were to develop each of these three sites independently, they would be a much larger footprint than if we were to develop them together and share the parking. So that would be another benefit of not doing the miles with the pavement.
And again, we need to reiterate, MDT would be building enough of the parking area to accommodate the rest area needs, but our design would take into account the expanded parking areas and develop a plan, a grading plan that would be able to be connected in the future.
Correct. Just real quickly on some of the traffic data, because I think you were wondering about that. Looking at the crash data, this area of I-90 adjacent to the site is actually exhibiting a lower crash rate, severity rate, as opposed to the rest of the interstate system. Slightly higher severity index. It just means that fewer crashes, the crashes that do happen might be a little bit more, have a few more injuries than normal, but we're only 1.08 times higher. So it's about the statewide average for crashes. Same for 212, actually much lower. Everything was lower across the board. 0.6 times lower than the statewide average for facilities similar to 212. And the accident themselves are much less severe. So crashes are not necessarily an issue here. Volumes would increase with the addition of both the tribal museum and the rest area. There would not necessarily be an increase in traffic because of the visitor center. They would be closing the one visitor center, opening a new one. That would just be the same traffic. Although there is an increase in traffic, we did analysis of the turn lanes through there. We wouldn't see a need for any additional modifications to the highway beyond what's there right now, which is a 3-lane facility. So the road itself would be able to handle any increase in traffic as a result of the three developments cohabitating.
And we are looking at a 20-year planning horizon, taking the data from today and projecting it out 20 years into the future.
Correct. Yeah, and these are all 20-year numbers. So traffic is all looking pretty good. It doesn't really matter if it's any one of the sites, because all three of the sites generate the same amount of traffic. So there's really no differentiating the sites because of the traffic. One might be able to say that a little more traffic in front of the hospital maybe is not a good thing. So there's ways to delineate or define the sites based on where you want to see some traffic. But as it sits right now, traffic is looking pretty good. There's not going to be any adverse effects that we see to the existing roadway facilities.
Really quick, Todd, I see Denise snuck in. I just wanted to introduce Denise Wonky in case some of you don't know the battlefield superintendent, and again, my fault for her being late. I gave her the wrong time, so thank you, Denise, for coming. Anything that you'd like to add at this point?
No, I don't think so. I think
So are there any questions regarding the traffic analysis that we've done today?
I got a question, but it might not be concerning what you're asking, but basically my question, we always kind of knew this was on the grid, and this is something on our radar that we're kind of looking at. And my question is this: has this group been meeting all the time? And if so, is this the first time you're meeting with the tribe?
No, we've been, since day one, we've had a tribal advisory committee that's been with us. This is our fourth meeting. They've been present at all four meetings. In fact, MDT and the tribe have been meeting for several months prior to that, even before this project was pulled together.
Okay, well now, I guess maybe I misunderstood, but from his comment earlier, the gentleman here, he stated that he don't even know who to talk to. So that's kind of why I got the impression that there was no dialogue.
Yeah, I actually gave the agreement to Marilyn, the tribal secretary that was working with Sean, and I wasn't sure, I haven't talked to her since I gave it to her, so that's the only person I had contact giving that to. But back in January, we met with the tribal chairman talking about this project, and so we've been working with the tribe for a good while. And the tribal chairman actually gave us the initial sites that he was suggesting that we pick for locations.
CJ, since I took oversight of transportation in June, I've had one meeting with these guys, and the next year in that time, I suggested that we come over and meet with here, because in the end, you guys have the yes or no. So as long as you guys are involved and aren't kept in the dark, or everything, you guys know what we do. You guys have a better understanding of this. That's why we're here today.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was going with. So we're basically looking for a joint action resolution. So okay, that's where I'm coming from.
Can I just add, the other participants that we've had from the tribe, Sunny Joe has been at all of our meetings, as well as Marilyn and Sean has been as well. Yeah, sorry, George Reed is. Yeah, and Mark has been, I think, the last
Yeah, I could maybe articulate that. I meant to cover that in my opening comments, but in our first meetings with the chairman, it was really his wish that we include individuals from different disciplines across his cabinet. So we included tourism, we included infrastructure. Larry Kindness was at a couple of the first meetings, and he's participated by phone conference on several others. Emerson's been involved from the cultural and historic perspective, as well as Sunny Joe, and then Mark with tourism. So it was really in the interest of the chairman that we set up the steering committee and tried to cover as many of the disciplines within tribal government as we could. And they've been in attendance, or at least corresponding through our meeting minutes through each of the meetings. So I meant to cover that when I first spoke, but I neglected that. So there has been good involvement, and it's been across a lot of different areas to make sure we're considering everything that needs to be considered in this decision. So exactly, yeah, that was part of the reason for the survey, was to get out to more folks that may not be a part of government, or part of the workings of the tribe, but more of a public comment type session. So that was the intent of the survey.
And our intent is also to have another meeting with the legislative body during your October
Yeah, they did, surveys during Native Days, was it? And, I don't know how many were filled out, there was quite a few that were actually filled out, and, they were, filled out mostly from tribal members, you know, just different age brackets from 100 all the way down to about, maybe 14, 15 years old. They had some comments, and it would have been nice if we had, you know, some of those here for these guys to look at. I think maybe if we could get some together and have copies for them to review also, that would, because, you know, the people, you know, we're here because of the people. And if we could, you know, kind of go along with some of their wishes, that would be really excellent, so.
Mr. Vice Chair, I have a copy of the survey results if you'd like. I can make both copies today.
Yeah, if you would, please.
And
Do it
that's
amongst the
on
committee.
our project website, which I believe you've been logged into now. So that can be downloaded directly from there as well. And Kevin from CTA we're gonna be going over that, public survey here, a couple more agenda items. Any other questions, comments on traffic or the current subject? At this point, we're going to talk a little bit about the environmental that's been done today. I'm going to hand the floor over to Linnell Peterson from Ethnoscience. Linnell's been working with the MDT, environmental folks, as well as to develop her report. To give away any of her information, I'll just hand the mic over so she can talk.
Good morning. I was hired to look at the previous investigations that have been done in the area and to identify what sites may have been identified, what surveys have been done in the past, identify areas of concern, areas that would need to be done in the future. I have some maps here, and I don't know if I should just set them off to the side or if I hand it to, okay? Basically, our research identified that all three locations have been investigated at some point in the past. There were two areas of minor concern, well, of concern, and that includes, let me pull my map up so I can get the areas right. In area 2, there is an 1880s GLO map that identified a stagecoach that came through the area, and it seems to cross near one of the locations. In area 3, Doug Scott conducted an inventory using, okay, give me a sec. Thank you. All right, so when we look at the general land office maps, it shows a stagecoach that comes through, basically goes through area 2 and then continues on. We have down in this location, an inventory was conducted by Doug Scott, who did metal detecting. And if you have a map, you can see that he identified several boards that he believes is associated with the 1876 battle. And he also identified what he believes was an Indian location up on a hill over in this location. During his studies, he expanded the boundaries of the battlefield site. And though the new boundaries are not on the National Register of Historic Places, it is associated with it. So we have a site boundary that is part of the National Register. And the National Register, it is registered within the National Park. So this area is our, because of its location within a culturally significant event. We examined both of these locations. They have both been cultivated. The stagecoach will no longer exist. It will have been destroyed during cultivation in the past. And no sites have been identified out there, at least by archaeologists. Now, the Crow Cultural Committee or group has not done their survey. And they may or may not have concerns about these locations, and we will identify that as an area that may need further work in the future.
Emerson, do you anticipate being able to do that at a certain time, or do you know?
Well, we did submit a budget and work plan to do the work. As soon as we get the green light, we'll be out there doing that. I think possibly you guys might be in today for our cultural committee meeting, but if not, we're having another one in October. So, but in that time, we'll probably discuss with them on this, the cultural committee. But we're planning on it as soon as we get the green light to go ahead and do the survey up there.
It's my understanding that MDT would like to look at maybe narrow down the choices before they have you do the survey. And so that's what the delay on that is. And I don't know when that'll be completed, but I suspect that the survey won't occur this year, but maybe next year. I guess Mr. Nolan would be a better person for that.
Yes, from what I understand, sites, get the number of the sites there, the sites north of the highway, yes.
1, 2, and 3.
Yeah. Site 3, we know what's there. It's been occupied. 1 and 2, since they've been disturbed, they're really at the same level of cultural impact. So until we select the specific site, I don't think it's money well spent right now until we narrow that down to a specific site.
If I may, since 3 has such a significant impact, at what point or what trigger would we say that that site is not viable?
I think all three sites will go through the selection criteria process, where we will rank each site based on traffic, environmental, geotech, topography, cultural, and it'll fall out at that point. Okay. You know, the cultural being such a big issue on that site, it'll likely just fall out, but we're not going to predetermine at this point that it's just gone, but the process will take care of that.
Okay.
I think that it's kind of either between site 1 and 2, because site 3 is basically, there's too much historical stuff there, I think, according to the survey that she's done. Like I said, site 2, it's already been plowed under, it's already been kind of farmed up. Site 1 was, but yeah, I mean, that's kind of where we're at as far as, you know, the specific site goes.
Does anyone have any questions or comments at this point?
I want to make a comment to your comment. I don't think, as far as like money well spent, I think just as far as being able to look at, making sure they might have cultivated it, but we still want to make sure that there's no fasting beds in the area, that we want to clear that no matter what. So I think it'll behoove us to go ahead and do at least that top site 1, so that we can fully make sure and clear that from the cultural standpoint, from our typical office.
Yeah, and the process would do that, because that would be part of MDT's requirements for the environmental. I think what Kevin was meaning to say is that once we once we know the site, then we can go do the full field review and analysis and do any mitigation that's required of that site, as opposed to doing it for all 3 sites. If we know 2 of them, we're going to go away.
And from the typical perspective, our biggest concern is one, just because of the location on top of those hills, and it might be faster than.
Sure. Yeah, there would be that full, we fully intend to bring the TIPO in and do that field review. Likely would be part of the phase 1B, which would begin after the first of the year. But we'll wait till it snows out there now too, so it's gonna have to drop around in the snow. Any other questions for Linnell or on that aspect of the work that's been performed thus far? Okay, I'll hand the mic over to Sarah. She's going to talk a little bit more about some of the other environmental aspects that we've reviewed. Again, these are all aspects that we're reviewing for each of the remaining sites, so we can help to determine which site we're going to move forward with.
So first I wanted to start with an overview of the noise analysis that's been conducted to date. Our sub-consultant, Sky Acoustics, has conducted a noise exercise, and they're looking at these 3 sites, 1, 2, and 3, and they prepared a report, an individual report for each of those 3 sites. As Todd mentioned, MDT has provided, yes, Kevin.
Push your board.
Okay.
Ladies. Thank you.
Everyone see that? So Todd mentioned that MDT has provided existing and projected traffic data, and this was a starting point for our sub-consultant to conduct their noise analysis. And they conducted a modeling exercise. So they looked at vehicles starting up and moving around the rest area site at about 25 miles an hour. And they also considered large trucks idling for a period of time to try and understand the types of noise impacts that might result if MDT moves forward with the rest area on any of these 3 sites. So starting with site 1, the closest noise receptor is the trading company. And sub-consultants use the term noise receptor. That means that a sensitive resource that might be located nearby. It might be a residence or a commercial building, a park. In this case, it's the trading company. And what they found is that there is projected to be an increase in noise levels, but it's not to the level that would meet what's called noise abatement criteria or a threshold of level. That noise increase is projected to be 3 decibels. The criteria have us look at an increase of 13 decibels. So it doesn't reach that threshold, but it is an increase over present day conditions. At site 2, the nearest sensitive noise receptor would be the Crow Hospital. And in this case, the sub-consultants also found that there would be an increase in noise levels. This would be a 7 decibel increase, so a little bit higher than site 1. Still not meeting that increase threshold, but an increase nonetheless. For site 3, down here at the bottom, the closest receptor is the monument. And again, there would be an increase in noise levels, and in this case, it would be by 2 decibels. So again, not meeting that threshold criteria. So of the 3 sites, the site with the greatest increase in traffic volumes would be site 2. Not rising to the level of meeting that threshold, but an increase that we will want to consider in our screening process. Questions, yes?
You just said the greatest increase in traffic volume, but talking about the increase in traffic noise.
I'm sorry, yes. I'm sorry. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
When you say, like site 2, you said the increase of 7 decibels?
Yes.
What could you compare that to in terms of like volume? Like if you turn it on the radio 7 notches, or is that what it is, or what is it Is it subtle, or is it a really, really big difference?
I'm not a noise engineer, but what I can tell you is the existing noise levels at these sites. Look at site 2. The existing noise level is 47, and that increase would bring it up to 54. But Todd, I don't know if you have an example of what a 7 decibel increase.
It's really
Or Doug?
background noise, I mean, I wanna say a jet engine's like 120 decibels.
I wonder if it's, the decibel, I wonder if it's like an exponential type increase, like, you know, like, for every decibel, you're not just going up one, it's increasing exponentially. I wonder if that's, probably not, but I mean, it's just,
I don't think that the decibel scale is not really.
No.
It's just really.
You know, I think it would probably be, and I'm just guessing,
I have a lot of sound information. I didn't know we were going into this today, and I haven't seen the results, so, but I could certainly provide additional information, about decibel levels. I have scales that show, you know, this many decibels equates to this kind of a common sound, so I'd be happy to provide that as a follow-up.
I was gonna say, it might be similar to like a.
okay, so
Air conditioner.
you said, that is, the noise level there, 7 decibels would be like, normal conversation. So it's not really that loud.
But the idea is that that's all of the time, so that's that much more noise all of the time.
But it's a normal conversation,
But it's
24/7.
It's a normal conversation, and what Sarah's pointing out is that the noise is not terrible at any of the sites. It's below the threshold that you would need to do any sort of mitigation. But what I think we would want to consider as a group is that, is it worth adding additional noise in front of the hospital, for example, versus adding additional noise in front of the trading post, which probably wouldn't care about the extra noise, probably rather like the extra traffic in front of them. But I think that's where we want to head with the noise, is that, you know, is it, if there are sites available that don't really add noise to the hospital, do we want to focus on those sites, even though all 3 sites are below the threshold?
I have a quick question. We had, in prior meetings with the transit, we had spoken about the need for input from the hospital. I was wondering if we had a representative or a conversation. I just don't want that to be a stopping point or a point of contention with them. If we're considering that, we should know ahead of time. And I'm wondering if we had a conversation yet with them.
No, to my knowledge, there hasn't been, the hospital hasn't been involved in any of these, but, I think it would be a good idea to have somebody from them at our next meeting. Talk about noise level, site 3 would probably be, maybe, you know, as far as noise friendly, would probably be the best site, because it's probably the only, the closest, is the cemetery. I don't think they mind too much.
Any other questions on noise?
It's not a noise, it's not something else, it's an issue about the site. Anyway, on the site 1, at one point in time, the tribe was considering putting a motel in that area, with like a resort, remember that, Nina? Okay, let's say you did do the rest area at that, does that affect your standards in regards to future plans? Let's say you guys put your rest area museum and the visitor center there, and then it so happens in the future the tribe builds around that. Is there a standard that the state has where that would encroach on that standard, where you would have to move, or does that affect it at all? I guess that's my question.
I would
say it doesn't affect it. The only standard that I'm aware of the state has, the state can certainly jump in if I get this wrong, would just be to make sure that at that point traffic impacts are being mitigated. The state's, if I'm remembering my MCA correctly, the state's legal authority pretty much ends at the right-of-way. If someone wants to develop anything outside the MDT right-of-way, that's their business. As far as the battle or the rest area is concerned, that would be its own separate site, and so any development that would occur adjacent to it would just be adjacent development. I would say similar to the rest area north 19th in Bozeman. It's right off of the I-90 interstate there, and you've got hotels and restaurants all around it. Frankly, I think it'd be smart for someone to put a hotel right next to the museum and visitor center.
We did discuss that at one of our meetings though specifically, and I think the consideration was that the tribe look into some sort of planning adjacent to that, because there are some uses you would not want to see there next to a rest area. Some kind of a housing development probably wouldn't be a friendly development next to the rest area. A sewer treatment facility probably wouldn't be something you'd want right next to the rest area. So I think there are uses that would be compatible and benefit from the rest area, but there are definitely some uses that the tribe would want to consider planning against to discourage certain types of development. So that was the context of the discussion related to that. But
Thank you.
I think we've had, that previous meeting we had with these guys, we went through some pretty extensive discussion on the locations. Because, site one, you're right next to Putz. People are gonna park their cars there, use the bathroom, and then they're gonna walk over to the Putz and spend their money over there. That's kind of one of the things that we see. And, but, there's smaller type opportunities for tribal members, to maybe set up a stand, or maybe the tribe could have like a dump station for like RVs and stuff, because it's pretty close proximity to the water tank there and stuff like that. I mean, there are some ways of generating a little bit of revenue from this, but that was the biggest thing. Even in the surveys, if you get a chance to look through the surveys, they're saying that's too close to the trading post, and these guys are going to make all the money. So that's a lot. There's been a lot of in-depth conversation regarding the location. To me, Site 3, I was pretty thought Site 3 would be a pretty nice place, but.
I got a question real quick. It's just in regard to the subject there. I've been involved in a lot of discussion concerning that area on Area 1, and knowing that, if we did something there, I think the tribe should seriously take a look at developing something that's going to complement the area, as well as utilizing both first the intent of the area and allowing the tribe to have some economic gain for the use. And as far as the trading post is concerned, their lease is up. The tribe has never approached them yet, Mr. Vice Chairman. I've told the tribe, I've told Mr. Bill Watt of Legal Counsel, and Mr. Bud Thompson's lease on both water and sewer is exhausted. And the tribe needs to get on that and take care of that. Because the tribe does provide that facility, that luxury, and we have never went there yet. And of course, the tribe's going to be providing this one too. So in the ground, in the air, on the surface, we're involved. And so we need to look at what we can do on the tribal side, as well as all the planning. And if we need to talk about going that route, we need to start establishing dialogue on how are we going to allow this area to complement the economic well-being of the Crow tribe. and not just be a pit stop, you know, cut and run. I mean, I hate to have it go that route. It's nice it's there, but it's good if we, you know, there's talks at one time of resorts, you know, stuff like that, investors that come in, and we've just had, you know, the wrong leadership at that time to do so. And so right now, in this current administration, I believe there's some things that can actually get done in this area that's going to complement everyone, non-member, member, and I think that we can turn it into a winner, the way I see it. And right now, you've got your best economic magnet is your battlefield. You know, your battlefield, you know, first of all, you got that. You've got your 212, I-90. You know, Crow Tribe's got casino. There's already existing gas station on the corner down there that was actually for sale. It was approached, they approached the tribe on that. And I just don't know where the tribe went with it. So, Mr. Chairman, if that's something that could be looked into, I think that's something that we should be looking at doing, is getting that corner back and then tying back into these areas that of, you know, of importance for the tribe economically.
Any further questions, comments? Sarah's going to continue and talk about some of the other environmental study that's been done in the area.
To date, we've conducted a review of existing documentation for each of the 3 sites. We've looked at biological resources, and I have a map to hand out, if you can help me. This is a figure provided by MDT showing the nearby location of a black-tailed prairie dog habitat, and it's south and west of the 3 sites. So we don't anticipate any impact from the rest area project to this habitat. There are listed species within the vicinity, although none of these species are located within 3 miles of any of the project sites. So we don't anticipate any impacts to federally listed wildlife species. There is a great blue heron rookery located south of the potential sites, but again, we don't anticipate any impacts to that site either. There are no eagle nests within 3 miles of the site. So in general, I think on the biology side, in terms of what wildlife species, we don't anticipate any significant impacts from the rest area sites to date. Are there any questions about biology or wildlife species on these 3 sites? Anybody? Okay. In terms of wetlands and water bodies, there are no wetlands documented within any of the potential site locations, and there are no wetlands identified on the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service's National Wetland Inventory maps online. Based on a review of aerial mapping, there are 2 ephemeral drainages located near Site 3 and 1 drainage located near Site 1.
Sarah,
Yes.
not everyone may know what that means.
And what that means is looking on an aerial, it's basically just a blue line drawn that might carry water at some point in time during the year. It's not a year-round water body or stream, but it may flow with water during certain parts of the year. And to confirm that, we would need on-site verification. And similarly to the cultural resources, I think our intent is to do more surveys on the ground once we've selected a specific site. Any questions about water resources or wetlands for any of the 3 project sites? Yes.
One question again. Is that considered the extent then of your environmental review? So is this complete at this point, or do you have next steps?
This is complete. We've completed the database review. You will summarize all of our results in the final memorandum. And as this comes together, we're anticipating that the site selection memo will have different sections on environmental resources, cultural resources, and so that information will be summarized. But the data has been collected. Yes.
Excuse me. How deep is the aquifer?
Oh gosh, we have not investigated that. We are doing a hydrology investigation.
Yeah, there is a hydrologic investigation going on only to the extent of available data. So if there's any geowick well data adjacent to that, we would have that information. But we're not drilling any test pits or wells at this point. There would be a more detailed subsurface investigation that would occur at the selected site through the next phase of development.
Mr. Chair, do you have a worry or a concern about a certain site or the impact on groundwater?
Well, just looking at, I don't have a topo map in front of me, but you know, just looking at the elevation. At the elevation, you know, there's some things that could seep into the groundwater. If you're up on a higher site, you know, it's gonna eventually, whatever happens there, it's gonna eventually, you know, make its way into. I mean, I know it's gonna be very, very minimal. You know, they're not talking of a jet fueling station or anything like that, but I mean, still, there's still, I think, a need for some concern over that.
Yeah, and in the development of the site, which would be part of the design build team's requirements, there are those requirements that MDT has in terms of stormwater retention and detention, as well as because of the type of facility, there would likely be oil water separators put into the collection system to make sure that those types of things don't get off the site.
And just to be clear, so in a phase one, that wouldn't be a scoped item at this point?
Correct.
We feel we can mitigate any of that in the design process to protect that groundwater.
Yeah, regardless of the three sites, that would be something that would have to be done so it doesn't become a deciding factor for any of the three sites. Are there any other questions for Sarah on the biological wetlands? So at this point, we've gone through a fair amount of work to identify some of these site-specific items, traffic, noise, environmental, cultural. We're at the point where we want to start developing a set of selection criteria and a matrix to define, or not to define, but rather to illustrate that criteria so we can start to select a site. And part of that is going to be also the visioning and the theme of the site. And that's where Kevin's going to help us out today. Kevin's going to spend a little time running, kind of recapping the public survey that we did, the themes and ideas that came out of that, and then we'd be happy to take additional comments. In fact, we would request additional comments at that point on what this group and committee feels would be appropriate. I think you'll get a better feel for what I'm asking once Kevin has a chance to talk.
Okay, throughout the process with meeting everyone, it was determined that everyone thought it was important to get input from non-government, non-engineers, just more of the public and the people that would actually be in the area using the facility and living around it, and you know, basically more public input. So a survey was put together with, I believe, 7 questions. The intent was to keep it nice and short, to encourage participation, and the surveys were mostly given out at Crow Native Days, which was in June. And we had
pretty good participation. I think it was a total of 94 responses. So we got a good range of input from a good range of age groups, which was nice. I'll just go through the questions quickly, and I think, does everyone have a copy of this now? Or anyone that doesn't? Don't have it?
Well, we just made.
Okay.
Thank you.
If you don't have a copy, we can get you another one, and like Todd said, there's on the website, the most current version of this is there. I'm not sure which version everyone has, but it's basically the same thing. We just have been developing it to make it more readable and understandable, I guess. If you don't have one, or if you want to make sure you have the most recent copy, you can get that off the project website. The first question that was asked had to do with the site location, and it was just which location would you prefer. Out of the people surveyed, the majority was Site 1. A lot of the main comments was that it was closer to the highway, and it would possibly draw more people into Crow, bringing it off the highway and the interstate, and then directing possibly to encourage some use actually in the town. The sites 2 and 3 were pretty equal with responses. I won't get into all the comments on all these since everyone has a copy now. But for this particular survey, Site 1 was the majority preferred that. The second question had to do with the culture, and it was fairly a general question. How would you like to see Crow tribal culture represented at the site? We did throw some suggestions out there. Some of the typical, or the ones that you would most likely see came up quite often. Teepee was pretty overwhelming that was suggested, representing that in this facility somehow. Horse representation was a big one, and circles, arrowheads, just the Crow culture in general was listed, and tribal colors came up several times, and representing the chiefs came up several times. So all those were good comments. There's also several that were maybe just mentioned once or twice that I thought were maybe should have been obvious, but didn't think of them until they showed up on the survey. Buffalo's a big part of the culture, just landforms, things like that, the mountains, the prairies, things like that. So I think what I get out of this is there's the ones that people normally would think of, but then there's also some really good ones that not everyone might think of at first. So I guess to explain what our intent is, and I probably should have done that at the beginning, is to give a direction to the design teams on what this facility needs to be. It's not designing the facility, so it's really up to you and up to the committee on deciding which direction and what information we want to direct the design build teams to do. You could go very literal and just say we want it to look like a teepee or represent a horse, or you could be more general in saying we'd like to incorporate Crow culture, and it's kind of up to the team to develop something and have it approved. So that's really what I'm looking for, I guess, is a direction on that, and it's the feeling of the committee and the people on the team to decide how we want to describe that to them and how we want to direct the future teams that are hired to actually do the design.
Kevin, I might just real quickly mention too that a member of the Crow tribe would be included on the design build selection committee. So when it gets to that point, when it becomes a project and MDT advertises it as a project, engineering and construction teams come together with their concepts for what they think we're trying to develop, and the committee would then choose the design build team to develop the sites and their proposal.
So, yeah, so I guess with those thoughts in mind, and maybe for me, it's the best example of just down the street, because I worked on some of that at the college, where you can see some pretty literal things going on, and how things are represented, like beadwork and brick patterns and things like that. But there might be some things that aren't quite as apparent, like just using natural resources and air ventilation, like a teepee would work, or exposed structure, where in the school it's steel and a teepee it's lodgepole. So it's really on a direction, and it can be interpreted so many different ways that's like I said earlier, that's the kind of direction that we're looking for, so we can direct the design teams later. The next question was site visibility. This one was pretty overwhelming, that most people thought it should be a highly visible site. And I think most people would agree with that, where it gets the attention and people will go there, and if they go there, then that hopefully increases, visitation to other things in the area. The fourth question had to do with building orientation. Generally, for the most part, facing the easterly direction, which is also a cultural thing, was noted. The other more common, or other ones that were common, were facing the highway, and I think that kind of goes back to visibility and seeing what type of facility is from the highway, and knowing what it is to be able to access it. But in general, east facing was a big one. For building preference, this was more left open just to general comments. One that occurred a lot was just representing the Crow culture in general. That came up quite often. Making it welcoming, bright, things like that. Another good one was incorporating the Crow language into the facility somehow. So that might be dual language signage or things like that. And then some of the other things were more maintenance type things, making sure it's taken care of, providing pop machines, baby changing tables, things like that are also good ideas. Some of the general information, it was more just to see what kind of participants we had, and this was talked about earlier. Out of the 94 surveys that we had, 87 were tribal members. One other was a different tribal member, and then the remaining were either didn't respond to that questions or were non-tribal. So most of them are people from the tribe. The age, the biggest age range was from the 20 to 59 group, which makes sense, and I think that's good. That's probably the ones that the age range that would probably be using it the most. But we also did have 10 from the age 10 to 19 and 11 that were older than 60. So we had pretty good range of participants in that also. As far as general comments go, most were really positive. You can just scanning it, you can see, looking forward to it. It's a great project. This is so needed. It's great positive change, exciting. So there was a lot of that, which is good to hear. I think it's been in the works for a long time, and I think people are just wanting it to happen. There were some other ones that were also cultural related, where one comment was remember the Tobacco Society, so we had a lesson on what that meant at the last meeting. And some of these comments do overlap quite a bit, but in general, the final comments were, we want this to happen and let's get it done. So from here, we'll have more meetings with the public, more meetings with the public meetings that you talked about, giving a little more input on what people want to see and their thoughts in general. My part is, like I said, to help give direction to the design build teams in terms of the aesthetics of it. And so that's where I, like to get everyone's input on how you want that to be presented and how detailed we want to get in directing the design build teams. So, felt kind of fast, but any questions?
I have a quick question. So by which format would you like to receive comment? Is it, and are you considering a discussion and dialogue, or would you like written comment, or, I mean, how do we inform the next level?
To me, it's whatever format people are most comfortable with. I mean, if we wanted to get into a discussion now or at a different time to key in how we want to go about this, that's fine. If people are more comfortable just writing something down, that works for me also. I probably in general needs to be a consensus though, because there'll be lots of opinions just like we saw here. So guess I'm not exactly sure which the best.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for coming. My name is Carlson Goes Ahead, legislator for the prior Elko district, also currently the speaker of the House. But I have a comment on about telling the story of I think there's a comment the number one, how many acres is that? The rest area is going to be developed. 4 acres? 40 acres. But yeah, when you come to a rest area, this is my comment, keeping crows. I'm not prejudiced against the Cheyennes or anything like that, but I don't know if anybody ever said that in here, but I'm very, I'll let you know what my thoughts are. But I believe the battlefield already interprets that. The interpretation should be, this was crow land. And we have to fight to keep the crow land as well too. And other stories, the Sioux, as the Cheyenne, they always say that this is they were trying to take over our land, but we have to, but that kind of interpretation is what I would like to see. That's my comment. But appreciate you having this meeting here, Mr. Vice Chair, bringing it over here, and welcome you guys. And I just, as the part of the legislative branch, we'd like to be in open this communication so that we can be involved in the process. Whatever our comments, I believe, is going to be important as well. I know it takes a team to get things done. Appreciate you being here. Thank you.
It may be relevant just to discuss a little bit of how we approach the design build process and inform the firms that are bidding on the minimum requirements. So for example, we could say we want the firms submitting to provide a number of stalls and a certain square footage for a building. Those are minimum requirements, but we also want to allow the firms a certain amount of freedom to be creative and to incorporate themes. And what Kevin is trying to get at, I believe, is to say, how firm do we want to be in informing the bidding firms on the theme? So do we want to say, these are the absolute minimums, teepee theme, or a certain entrance facing east, or do we, is that the level that we want to inform the firms bidding and make certain that they incorporate a minimum level and then allow them the freedom to be creative beyond that?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much hits it. Is how direct do we need to be with them, or do you want to be with them? And we'd probably have 30 different opinions on what this place should look like just in this room, so that's what makes it difficult.
I think that the design stuff, I think a lot of that, the tribe should have a big part in the design, because say, oh yeah, well we want to build something, and put it together, make sure the door's facing the east, and we want this, this, and that on there. And that's, I mean, I'm not prejudiced myself either against, anybody, but, like a crow thinks different than a white guy. So I mean, if there's much crow thought behind it, in the design and I think that's because, crows are pretty creative people. I don't know if any of you have ever been to Crow Fair and seen the parade. We have, probably the most beautiful beadwork ever that these crow women produce. And, we're creative people too. So, I think that we should be incorporated in any design or anything like that. Not to take away anything from I mean, I do understand the architectural part of it. There's some things that just aren't doable. But, to try to meet, somewhere in the middle, I think that this, that's my own comment. I'm sure everybody else has one too. But
yeah, I think what we've heard overwhelmingly is that we want to ensure that it represents the people here, that it's a community-oriented project. From the beginning, we wanted to make sure that we had the buy-in and the support of the local community, and I think we just want to ensure throughout the process that we don't abandon that anywhere to allow for more creativity. Those are all good things, but I think we want to just stay close to that core tenet of representing the community and having that community involvement throughout. So I think if anything, we want to make sure this next round of public comment, along with the legislative session in October, captures that, maybe gives a little better direction from the survey results that we already obtained. And then once we've made a decision on the site, which is really what this is all about still, is deciding on the site, when it comes to the design build, we want to make sure that we are moving forward, but that we are keeping in mind and keeping the right players involved locally to ensure that we keep that feel and that representation of the culture, that we don't lose the crow feel to the whole thing. So I think that's the most important thing that I've heard throughout the whole process.
It seems that there must have been pretty good input in the development of the college here.
Yeah, with the college, it was more, committee members at the college with their building committees and that on the ones I was involved with. And Daniel Glenn was involved with, I think, most all the projects there, and I believe is a member. I'm pretty sure he's a member. And so design-wise, there was always that influence, and then back and forth and reviewing and options and things like that. So it's, just like any other client, it's, we want to give them what they want. So that's what the design build team would be directed to do.
I don't know if it was ever really stated, but one of the goals for the consultants for MDT, one of the deliverables they are going to have is a 3D rendering of the site, and the whole emphasis of the advisory committee, primarily with the tribal involvement, and what we keep talking about is the theme that we're trying to do. So we're trying to come up with a 3D rendering, a site of really of what it's going to look like. And I guess in my mind, and we talked about a little bit, that when we finally, and that'll be the second phase. First phase is really trying to find a site which is the best site, and the next phase will be actually coming up with this 3D rendering, and then it will go into the consultant will get the environmental permits and the permitting for sewer and water connections and whatever. And then when we finally go to the design build, we actually have a theme and a rendering of what it looks like. And I guess what I'm envisioning that the contractor engineering firm, whoever it is that gets the contract, will come up with a couple of different designs that the committee that we started with will look at and review and come up with something that everybody's happy with. But anyway, I just wanted to emphasize that.
Well, I might add that the rendering would be more in terms of how the site looks overall as opposed to the physical structures of the site. That, you know, you wouldn't be looking at a real intricate building that you might see an architect bring forward as a concept, as opposed to this would be roughly where the rest area would be, this would be roughly where the museum would be. These are roughly the sizes of the facilities needed. This is roughly how the area could be graded and laid out in such a way. So we don't necessarily want to define buildings for the design build team either. We can go into great detail on it's going to be wood, it's going to be brick, or maybe we want to define that it's going to be wood or it's going to be brick. But these are the questions that we want to present to the committee in terms of we want it all one story, or 2 stories is fine, or high windows, or no windows, all brown, or incorporate these specific things, or incorporate one of these 4 things, and that's where we would be able to develop a path forward for the design building and help with the 3D rendering of the site. But a little bit of a balancing act. We don't want to go too far down the design build path for them, unless that's what the committee, I guess, decides. Well, it has to be 1 story, it has to be brown, it has to be facing east, it has to be in the shape of the building, it has to incorporate these 3 other things. I guess could go that far as part of the requirements for the design build. But that's the direction we're looking at now from the tribe is, you know, how broad are we going to be, or how narrow are we going to be in terms of defining what the site can look like, and that, you know, that's where we would want the tribe's input in terms of design concepts and ideas and how you want it to look. I mean, I can do a parking lot pretty easy. It's always black. And there's always yellow paint. But you know, if that doesn't change, I'm fine with that. I'm an engineer. I've got no creativity. But as far as how the building goes, that's where we want for specific input.
Yeah, I think we all have, you know, there's a lot of ideas, you know, like I said, we have a lot of club members that are very creative, very artistic, and at the same time, their artwork is functional. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, I'm sure that we have somebody, maybe a group of people that are able and willing to come up with some kind of a design. And, you know, I think one important thing that we as a tribe would like to stress is green. You know, make sure that it's as green as possible. I've been to a lot of buildings where they incorporated like a lot of recycled, you know, materials, and they look very, very, you know, beautiful. And then you look closer, and then here you can see that they made it out of trash, you know. And an example I'm thinking of is I went to a bank, a new bank building, and it was made out of all you know, recycled material, you know. In the walls there was like, it looked really nice, you know. And then you got up closer, here was like busted glass shards that was kind of inside the concrete, and then they had like trees and, you know, stuff in there, and it was really, you know, it looked really nice. And it didn't cost as much either from what they said. I didn't ask them how much it cost, but they said compared to a conventional building with all raw new materials, that, you know, it didn't cost as much.
Well, I perceive this as being evolving as we go through our meetings with the legislature and the districts, and then come together and pick out what themes are most important and predominant.
Are there any other suggestions or comments regarding
I have a comment real quick. I mean, it's just to reiterate what Senator Goza had stated, that I believe that this should be a reflection of the community, and I believe it should be something that I was kind of thinking maybe we can get the college kids involved. Ask them on that level of what they would think and what they would feel. Because of course, like Vice Chairman Wilson has stated, we have a lot of ladies here that are artists, in their beadwork, and we have a lot of men that are artists and making different things, paintings versus the different regalia and whatnot. And of course, you guys were talking about doing something like a museum, was it? I think that should be a reflection of the community here. And there's a lot of wealth there, a lot of that history, and I think that it should be brought out. It wasn't just a battle. There was a lot more to it, and which I really don't need to get involved in that because we'd be here for a while. But just to have a reflection of what the community, is in its Crow, is something that I would truly stand behind. I think that we have a museum. I believe that from the building of it to just the different aspects of the construction. I think that needs to be incorporated in the culture needs to be incorporated in that part of it as well. And so I really feel like I guess it's kind of hard to speak to because we just don't really know what kind of what we're really looking at yet. Just kind of shooting from the hip, just thinking about it. Everybody looking at a rest area, you're thinking of a rest area, you're just thinking of a little hut. Boys on this side and girls on that side. I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's what you're thinking. I don't know. Maybe that's where we're actually talking about. But to actually have something to refer to and look at, versus just a colored piece of paper over here and identifying areas. I think it'd be this part of this conversation. I think we actually have to have some kind of examples, looking at just the size of it, 40 acres, how big's the building going to be? I hate to have 40 acres with just 1,200 square foot, just, what I'm saying, it just doesn't make no sense. And, we just kind of have to have a good idea about what we're dealing with here. And then that way we can incorporate, the different areas of our culture in it. I just hate to have just a little hut building with a little sand pit in the back for the dogs and, that kind of thing. That's not what I really like to envision here, but I believe it's going to be a little bit more grander scale than that. But, when you're talking about a rest area, most people are going to think like that. That's why I'm kind of giving you that perspective that we should, if we're going to have these kind of meetings and kind of involving the public, we should have something for them to look at on what level of, as far as construction's concerned, what level are we looking at here? Most people, like I said, are just going to be looking at like the one down the road here between Hardin and Billings. Out in the middle of nowhere, might have some prairie dogs over here, people walking their dogs everywhere. You're gonna have to watch where you walk, those areas. And that's just my thoughts. And I really think that's really important to give the public a perspective on this. Then that way I believe that they'll, if it's gonna be on grander scales, I really believe that the public would really get involved,
I should say that, not only do we want to decide on a building theme, but we also have amenities with our rest areas, like picnic areas, are probably popular. And that also could incorporate bench or shelter, we could, you know, do something there that, you know, is more, the neighbors want. So those are, I'm wondering if we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves here in some respect. Is that the site selection is probably the most important item we need to come to out of this phase of our project. And once we get to that point, the next phase, we can really focus in on a site layout. How is it going to look? And be able to bring out some specific concepts after, you know, the site selection.
And yeah, like with that being said, you know, whether it's cart before the horse or horse before the cart here, but what I'm trying to get at is that, you know, right now you have 3 areas. You have one area with historical value. You have one area that's on the top of a hill that there's going to have to be some dozer work and some dirt work and all that kind of stuff. Then you have one area that's tucked behind the hospital. That's kind of out of the way. And most likely we're looking at number 1, you know, for the prime location. And so, you know, trying to have some kind of a scale of what we're looking at would kind of determine on, you know, give us a final determination on where the site should be, you know. If it's, you know, and then that way, I mean, the tribe, the legislative branch, the executive branch, we could come to terms on how we're going to incorporate our economic comprehensive plans, or, you know, what needs to get done there, because there's still discussion of certain things that are to be done over there. And it'd be great to get it done together, rather than, you know, wait till you guys get it done and then try to jump in there and get something done, and we might have to tear out some sidewalks to build a road, or might have to tear, you know, I mean, you just don't want to do all that. You'd rather build it into the plan, you know. Let's just cut once, you know, on this one. And so that's just something that I wanted to, you know, bring to the conversation. You know, we got the engineers, we got different ones here in the room, the tribes here. We've got majority of our senators here in the House, and, you know, I really think that's an important value to this part of dialogue that we need to look at. I mean, like I said, we can look at that, and a lot of people, you know, I appreciate maps, but, you know, when you're looking at the scale of things, you know, some people can't figure out 40 acres to 400 acres.
Yeah.
And so when you're looking at the scale of a building, you know, versus picnic area, you know, and then maybe there's camping sites, I don't know, parking lot is going to be a big deal, because that's, you know, there's parking. You know, just those things. I know Vice Chairman Wilson had stated something like an RV clean out, or, you know, something, you know, to that effect. And then, of course, you know, we were talking that we've got a lot of young, you know, men and women that, you know, they might want to go up there and, you know, set up their 10 by 10 canopies and, you know, sell some jewelry or something, you know. You know, I mean, there's these opportunities, and I think we just need to think about what we're dealing with here first. You know, I mean, when we're saying rest area, you know, most people are looking at just a you know, common rest area, you know, and that's something if that's what you want them to see, then let's look at it like that. But I don't think that's what we're looking at here. You know, I think we're on a grander scale, and it'd be best that we have something to work with, so then that way we can fit it into these areas that we're trying to locate. You know, if 3 is better than 1, then let's figure out how we're going to do it. I mean, there's a lot more ground there, but then again, you're looking at 1 and 3 at a lot of dirt work, and we got to figure out how we're going to do this. And that's just something I want to, you know, incorporate. But, you know, going back to the first part of my my conversation was that it's gotta be incorporated Crow. You know, we're right in the heart of Crow. I mean, Crow Agency's the capital of Crow country here, and we've gotta incorporate Crow.
Yeah, I think he makes some really good points, and with respect to that, I think this next round of public meetings, I think we have enough input now on the types of structures that might be included in this facility, the amenities that might be there. If we could have the approximate footprint of each of those, and you know, we're not nailing anything down. These things can still move around like pieces on a chessboard, but if we have a 40-acre visualization on the map of each site, and then the chess pieces that might be included there in the form of an RV dump, some places for entrepreneurs to set up their little shacks off to the side of it, maybe not incorporated into the site, but a picnic area, the approximate size of the museum, visitor center, rest area, a large teepee structure if that becomes, there's no reason why we couldn't have all of those things as moving pieces at our next series of public meetings. And that might really help direct the conversation and get better input to help us make that site decision. Because I think we all understand that we're at the point of selecting a site, but as he says, without having some of those pieces and a visualization of what they might look like, it's pretty hard for people to give valuable input. So we can probably direct our presentation for this next round of meetings in October more toward, here's what it could look like, here's some of the pieces that might fit in there and their approximate sizes. How do you feel about that? And how should we arrange those things and to make that survey a little bit more pointed, or whatever, you know, whatever this is, an open public forum or discussion, whatever it might be. I think we can direct that and get a lot more valuable input.
Yeah, I agree. There needs to be a concept plan that shows the scale of the whole area. Without that, it's tough to hone in on specifics.
Okay, I think that about wraps it up. Unless there's any more questions or comments from anybody, or, I mean, there's a lot of information here. I know, like I said earlier, I'm gonna tell Representative Gozek that I just took oversight of the transportation in June, and we had one meeting, and then after that I said, you know, next time we have any meetings, we'll involve the legislature, because in the end, you know, you guys have the yes or no, and I feel that, you know, as long as we keep the line of communication open, you know, we get a lot of good things done, instead of, you know, us keeping things over there and then just popping it to you at the start of the session, you know. So we keep things, you know, everybody involved, everybody on the same page, so we can make this thing fly pretty quickly.
To that end, and considering our desire for forward progress, do you feel that there's anyone else we should be involving at this point?
Well, I think the next meeting we need to have is probably a representative from the IHS, from the hospital, you know, regarding that site too. Also, I think we need to probably have somebody from legal over here, and also somebody from BIA. You know, we're dealing with trust land, so if we had a representative from each of them three places present at the table, I'm sure that you have some questions, you know, specific to them that only they can answer, and they could answer them at that time, and that way it's kind of, like I said, it's keeping everybody on the same page.
What time frame then should we target for our next? I know it was October sometime, but you know, when does it get the committee scheduled best? And is this the venue that we select for that? And trying to get public involved. What do you suggest for a strategy to try to get the best bang for our buck and still fit a time frame where we're moving ahead and we feel like we're getting close to a decision?
Well, maybe more specifically, we had anticipated meeting with the legislative body in October, but if this is the legislative body that we need to just be talking to, do we just continue with this group, or do we need get on the agenda for the October session to address the whole body?
See what I asked for, why we're here, what we're doing here today. This is a committee meeting. the transportation committee. The regular session is in October, and so, you know, if we wanna get this passed, this phase one of this project passed, we need to, you know, get on the ball and submit something. I think the deadline,
20th, wasn't it? 20th.
September 20th is the submission deadline?
yeah, submission deadline for, in order to get something put
Yeah,
on,
next Friday,
October,
for the October session, yes.
October session.
That would be, 7th to the 18th.
But, I mean, like I said, I mean, I realistically, I personally, I don't think that we could get, you know, everything in place by then. I think we need some more, committee meetings like this. We need that MOU from legal. I mean, that's, so, like I said, I'll get with legal and tell them to get on it. But there's always, there's always opportunity for the special session. You know, the speaker has that to, you know, if we request a special session, you know, he can call a special session and we could deal with just this specific subject and we could get it hammered out in a day.
But we always have that 15-day notice. Where we can have a committee meeting and make sure that it's ready for the full legislature to approve or disapprove. So we have, so that's what that 15-day notice actually is. You know, you submit the proposed legislation, and we have that 15 days to look it over through the committee. If it's ready, then at the end of the 15 days, we call for a special session.
Mr. Speaker, or Mr. Vice Chair, what would be important to present in that session to the full legislative body?
Just basically a brief summary of what's gone on so far and you know, like Representative Stewart stated, you know, like a bigger map to put on the board, and then, you know, handouts of everything, so where everybody knows, okay, well, site 3 is over here. You know, if I didn't have a map, you know, where's site 3 at? You know, just kind of keep everybody on the same page. You know, there's you know, speaking personally, I'm more of a visual type person. It's, oh, okay, site 3, that's next to Putz, it's site 1, and, you know, like that, and then the hospital's right next to you. You know, you can actually see it and, you know, go like that, because I'm assuming that's what we're after, just the site to, you know, to initiate phase 1 of this. So I think we just stick to that, stick to what we're doing, and then just a brief summary of the, you know, what's going to go on afterwards. But the important thing, just to get phase 1 initiated, is just stick to phase 1. I think maps are going to be important.
In terms of working with the legislative staff, who would be the key person to draft this piece of legislation? You said, I think somebody said something about a joint resolution or a joint, what does that look like, and who do we work with on that piece?
It would go through executive legal. That's who they have the MOU, and they should start doing the draft, and then the joint action resolution. It you know, it comes here, and with the in conjunction with the transportation committees, sort of like it's a group between the legal, executive legal, and the transportation committee. They sit down and then they go over it, and they come up with something to be voted on.
Yeah, our transportation committee will be working with our attorney as well too. His name is Jay Harris, behind me right here.
And then probably, Mr. Speaker, would it be probably good to involve the infrastructure?
Yeah. So we always have a slash committee. We're all involved in the committees regardless. And when the proposed legislation, when it comes to the floor, you know, we're pretty much informed by that. That's why committees are important. once the legislation is adopted, after you read the entire proposed legislation, then you have a 30-minute presentation. If you need additional time, it's up to the speaker for that additional time.
And that's probably about a point where we're ready for the end of phase 1B. So, one official legislation, or am I thinking? I don't think we would be looking for legislative action by this October, but this would probably be something more incorporated. I think this October we'd be looking for just an informative.
Yeah, if you want to come in and get us up to speed for your phase 1, phase 2, or phase 3, wherever you're currently at, we can also give you that opportunity to make that presentation during the quarterly session.
So we would still need, it sounds like we still need to even just have an informative presentation. We would have a request put in by at least the 20th, so it would be on the agenda.
Yes, you wanna be on the Secretary of the House actually receives all the, Secretary Old Crow Canoe over there. Legislation is distributed to him, and he distributes legislation to the appropriate committees.
Yeah, it's, what I'm hearing in terms of process then is that we would have an informative session for the entire body in October.
Yeah.
And then any legislative action, this joint resolution would be relative to the MOU and the endorsement of the legislature for the final site selection. And that we would pursue at your next session. Which when would that be scheduled then?
It could be the second week. We could probably look at that, the second week of the session, which would be the secretary. You want to say something?
Thank you. I guess at this time, what you need is an MOU, right? In regards to collaborating with one another for the site. And then the next step would be acquiring that site, right? Whether it be, or is it?
It will be a lease agreement. Probably.
Okay, yeah, that's
It
what I'm
would be an
talking about.
acquisition.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. It'll be an acquisition of the trouble land, right? So that would probably go to Surface Land Committee. Anyway, that would probably be, let's say, January is the next session. Is that what you're asking about? When's the next session?
Yes.
There's an October session and then a January session. Unless things are going along quicker, then we can request a special session like with what they're talking about. Between October and January, let's say you had something ready by December, or something like that, you can request another session through the executive legal. Well, it would probably be Bill Watt, I assume. Anyway, if it is, he knows the process. And once you get together with him or whichever attorney you're with, they'll explain to you the process, and I'm sure they'll get it organized that way. Thank you.
And I think from the discussions that we've had, that we were hoping to have a decision by January, so it may fit very well just to go through and inform and then be working to have that legislation drafted in preparation of your January regular session. That timing should fit the scope of our project pretty well, I think.
Yeah, we want to make sure we have, all of our evaluation criteria gathered for each site and be able to present that.
This is our Transportation Committee Chair.
I'm Noel Liggins. I
think that's pretty much all we have. Kevin? So if I heard right on our process going forward, if we were considering doing presentations for each tribal district, is that right?
Three of the, three locations.
What are they? Are they, maybe we should rethink that and rather present to you as.
I was thinking we could still vote. Yeah, the thought earlier through discussion with committee, the Pro Tribal Committee was, meeting, if I recall correctly, about ours near Black Lodge, one here in Rodenstein and one down in Fox Cross. There's three locations and they would be in 3 consecutive nights. Just to make sure that we had a good coverage of the area. I think at that point we would want to just present maybe some more detailed concepts and just let folks know what's going on and then request additional information or comments at that point.
I know that you mentioned Black Lodge and Crow and then Moss Grass, but you know, Pryor is about 75 miles away, and I'm sure you live much closer to there, right? South of Billings. But we do have a community center there that would benefit. We have like, well, I usually make my report to the, what we call the Elder Committee, the 107 Committee, it's called the Fire Commission Committee. I know that they have one here in Crow, and they meet on Tuesdays, and that's quite a few elders. And Lost Grass has one currently too, just recently actually. But you know, in the evenings, you know, I would rather suggest, you know, fire at the community center. Probably set that up and probably Crow and then Lost Grass there, because Black Lodge is connected with Crow, so multi wherever you're gonna have that meeting. And then Lost Grass is always with Wyola, and the majority, you know, then the Bighorn district, they, you know, they usually come to Crow. They're here, they can speak for themselves, but that's just my opinion anyway. But Pryor, I'm speaking on behalf of Pryor. Either you want to come to during the day, they usually meet pretty early. You can, and on Tuesday, on every Tuesdays is when they meet. And if you want to set that up and talk to the Elder Committee, there's about 37 of them. So that might be something you want to look into, might consider rather. You said you don't want to do the evening, you know, or you want to do the evening, we'll find it.
We can do whatever best suits the group. And actually, it was the committee who was going to set up the public meetings and we were going to attend, so we'll have to get with our new committee members as to which method. Yeah, you know, prior is just to place the whole meeting. And you said they meet Tuesdays at what time?
Tuesdays,